Hi friends, welcome to T1 Academy. As part of Polity quick revision classes, let us continue the remaining topics. So the next topic is schedules. Schedules under the Indian Constitution. See, if you take the original Constitution of India, which came into force on 26th January 1950, it contained 8 schedules. But today, after 75 years of the Constitution being under operation, today we have 12 schedules under the Indian Constitution. So let us try to briefly discuss what is there in every schedule. And even before that, what is a schedule? What is the explanation for schedule? How do you define a schedule? So if any article in the Indian Constitution or if a group of articles in the Indian Constitution, if they need a detailed explanation, then they are explained under the schedules. So in other words, a schedule is a detailed explanation of one or more articles under the Indian Constitution. So now under the Constitution of India we have 12 schedules. The first schedule, Schedule 1, it speaks about the list of states and the union territories. See, in Article 1, there is reference to several expressions like India is a union of states. There is reference to the expression territory of India. There is reference to acquired territories. As of now, in India, we don't have acquired territories. We have two kinds of territories. One is states, the second one union territories. So in India we have 28 states today and we have 8 union territories. The most recent reorganization of the state, it is in relation to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So Jammu and Kashmir, which was earlier a state with a special autonomy, that statehood was taken away and the state of Jammu and Kashmir was made into 2 union territories, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. So this was done in 2019 through Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act of 2019. So earlier we had 29 states. After the reorganization of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, today we have in India 28 states. So the first schedule contains the list of all the 28 states and the territorial extent of each state. In addition to that, Schedule 1 also contains the list of 8 union territories and the territorial extent of each union territory. That's it about the first schedule. Then if you take the second schedule, the second schedule of the Indian Constitution, it speaks about the salaries, allowances and emoluments of certain constitutional authorities under the Indian Constitution. For example, in India, under the Indian Constitution, we have the office of the President, office of the Governor, we have a Judge of Supreme Court, Judge of High Court, Comptroller and Auditor General. So with respect to Lok Sabha, we have the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker. With respect to Rajya Sabha, we have Chairman and a Deputy Chairman. With respect to Legislative Assembly, we have the Speaker and Deputy Speaker. With respect to Legislative Council, we again have Chairman and Deputy Chairman. So with respect to all these constitutional authorities, the salaries, allowances and emoluments, they were discussed in the second schedule. Then when you take the third schedule of the Indian Constitution, it speaks about the form of oath administered to certain people in India, some under the Constitution of India, some outside the Constitution of India. For example, a minister in the union government, a minister in the state government, a judge of Supreme Court, the Comptroller and Auditor General, a person who gets elected to Parliament and state legislature is also administered oath. In addition to this, those who are contesting to Parliament, contesting to the state legislatures, they are also administered oath. So for all these people, the oath administered includes the following keywords. So when they are administered the oath, they say that they bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of India. Allegiance means loyalty. All these people, they take oath saying that they bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of India. They protect the sovereignty, unity and integrity of India. But when it comes to the Judge of Supreme Court and the CAG, In addition to these two, they also say that they will uphold the constitution and laws in India. So that's what Article 3 deals with. Article 3 deals with administering of oath to the Speaker and Deputy Speaker of Lok Sabha and Legislative Assemblies, Chairman and Deputy Chairman of Rajya Sabha and Legislative Council, a Minister of the Union Government, a Minister of the State Government, a Judge of the Supreme Court, and a Comptroller and Auditor General. In addition, those who are contesting to Parliament, those who are contesting to State Legislature, they are also administered oath. The form of oath is laid down in Schedule 3, that is Schedule 3. Then Schedule 4. See, the Schedule 4, it speaks about representation of the states in Rajya Sabha. Here if you compare Rajya Sabha with the upper house in America, we all know that in India, the national parliament is bicameral. So bicameralism means having two houses in the legislative branch. So the upper house in India, it is called Rajya Sabha or the Council of States. The lower house is called Lok Sabha or House of People or the lower house. But in America, the upper house is known by the name American Senate. American Senate. So the American Parliament is called American Congress, the upper house is called American Senate, the lower house is called House of Representatives. So in America, in the upper house, in the American Senate, all the states are equally represented. So there are 50 states in United States of America, irrespective of the size, irrespective of population, all the states have equal representation in the upper house. So each state sends 2 representatives. So there are 50 states, so 50 into 200. So the total strength of American Senate, which is the upper house, is 100. Each state sends 2 representatives. But in India, in Rajya Sabha, which is the upper house, the states are unequally represented. So I said in India we have 2 kinds of territories, state and union territory. In Rajya Sabha, states are represented, union territories are also represented. But representation to the states and the union territories in Rajya Sabha, it is in proportion to population. So states with a higher population like Uttar Pradesh will have greater representation in Rajya Sabha. States which are small will have lesser representation in Rajya Sabha. So 4th schedule, it speaks about a representation of states in Rajya Sabha. So when new states are created, we need to amend the 1st schedule and also the 4th schedule. I just told you that in 2014, Telangana was carved out of the erstwhile state of Andhra Pradesh. So when the new state of Telangana was created from the existing state of Andhra Pradesh, so we need to make changes to the 4th schedule because the representation of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana in Rajya Sabha, it changes. That has to be reflected in the 4th schedule. In addition to this, to the list of the states and union territories in the 1st schedule, we also need to make changes. So when new states are created, when new states are reorganized, when states are reorganized and new states are formed, it becomes compulsory to amend Schedule 1 and Schedule 4. That's it about the 4th schedule. Then, if you take the 5th schedule and the 6th schedule, 5th schedule and the 6th schedules. 5th schedule and the 6th schedule both deal with addressing the problems of the tribal areas. We know that in India, tribals are the most backward in terms of social and educational indicators. So when the constitution was drafted, abundant care was taken to protect the interests of the tribal communities. And the areas where the tribals are heavily concentrated, they are given certain constitutional safeguards. So we have 2 kinds of areas inhabited by tribals. They are called 5th schedule areas, 6th schedule areas. Both the 5th schedule and the 6th schedule, they are dealt by, both the 5th schedule and the 6th schedule, they deal with tribals only. 5th schedule is under Article 244 Class 1, 6th schedule under 244 Class 2. But the difference is, 6th schedule speaks about tribals in Northeast India in 4 states, Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. So in these 4 states, in the regions where the tribals are predominant, they are given self-governance. That's why the 6th schedule areas, they are called state within a state, an imperium within an imperium. So in the 6th schedule areas, in the states of Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram, there are autonomous councils, autonomous district councils, autonomous regional councils. These councils, they are representative bodies giving representation to the tribals. They enjoy executive powers, they enjoy legislative powers, they enjoy financial powers, and they even enjoy judicial powers. So this is a promise of greater autonomy to the areas inhabited by tribals under the Constitution of India. That's about the 6th schedule. So 6th schedule basically deals with the tribals in Northeast India in 4 states, Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram, where we have the administration being carried on by autonomous councils, autonomous district councils, autonomous regional councils. Then if you take mainland India, in states like Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Jharkhand, Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, Himachal Pradesh, Gujarat, Maharashtra. So in mainland India, in all these 10 states where we have predominant tribal areas, they are recognized as the 5th schedule areas. In 5th schedule areas, administration is carried on by the governor. But to advise the governor, there is a body called TAC, Tribes Advisory Council. So Tribes Advisory Council is headed by the Chief Minister of the concerned state, and the Tribes Advisory will contain the ST MLAs in the concerned state legislative assembly. So this Tribes Advisory Council headed by Chief Minister will advise the governor, and the governor will administer the 5th schedule areas. So the governor will make regulations. The laws made by the governor, they are called regulations. He can make regulations for the peace and good governance of the 5th schedule areas. So while administering the 5th schedule areas, the governor also enjoys discretionary powers. While administering the 5th schedule areas, the governor also enjoys discretionary powers. So in 1996, through PESA Act, through Panchayats Extension to Schedule Areas Act of 1996, the 3-tier Panchayat Raj system was also extended to the 5th schedule areas. So in 1992, we had the 73rd Amendment providing for the establishment of 3-tier Panchayat Raj institutions. This was implemented in the 5th schedule areas in 1996 through a separate law made by the Indian Parliament. So this law, it is called the PESA Act, Panchayats Extension to Schedule Areas Act 1996. So the beauty of this PESA Act is, Gram Sabha in the 5th schedule areas is much more powerful compared to the Gram Sabha in the rest of India in the rural areas. So Gram Sabha was given sweeping powers to empower the tribal communities in the 5th schedule areas. That's about the 5th schedule and the 6th schedule areas. Both the 5th schedule and the 6th schedule areas provide constitutional safeguards and administrative autonomy to the tribals in mainland India as well as in Northeast India. That's about the 5th and 6th schedules. Then we have the 7th schedule. So we all know that the Constitution of India is a federal. This I have explained in the earlier video. So the definition of federalism is, in any country, if the Constitution divides the executive and the legislative powers between the national and the regional governments, then that constitution is called federal constitution. So the executive powers, legislative powers, financial powers, they are divided between the central and the state governments in the Indian constitution in the 7th schedule under Article 246. So 7th schedule, it speaks about 3 lists, list 1, list 2, list 3. So list 1 deals with union list, list 2 deals with the state list, list 3 deals with the concurrent list. In list 1, when the constitution has come into force, there were 97 items, but now we have 98 items. In state list, that is list 2, in the original constitution we had 66 items, but now we have only 59 items. In the concurrent list, initially we had 47 items, Now we have 52 items. So with respect to all the subjects in the union list, Parliament is supreme. With respect to all the subjects in the state list, state legislatures are supreme. With respect to subjects in the concurrent list, both Parliament and state legislatures can make laws. And if there is a conflict between a parliamentary law and a state law, the laws made by Parliament will prevail over the state laws. Now, the residuary powers, those powers which are not mentioned in the Constitution, they are given to the central government. So, 7th schedule, it speaks about division of powers, vertical and a territorial division of powers between the center and the state governments. There were several changes in these lists. For example, in 1976 through the 42nd Amendment, 5 items from the state list were moved from state list to concurrent list. Recently, in 2016, the 101 Amendment relating to GST, it has brought several changes both in the union list and also in the state list to bring in goods and services tax into implementation. That's about the 7th schedule. Then 8th schedule. So the 8th schedule of the Indian Constitution deals with the official languages of both the union and the states. For example, if you take the union government, the official language of the union government is English. Along with English, Hindi is also the official language of the union. Remember, Hindi is not the national language. Hindi is not made the national language. Hindi is made only as the official language of the union. So, in addition to the official languages of the union, the 8th schedule also speaks about the official languages of the states. So, we have a total of 22 official languages mentioned in the 8th schedule. So, this was amended several times. The 21st Amendment, 71st Amendment, 92nd Amendment, they have added new languages into the 8th schedule. For example, Sindhi, Bodo, Dogri, Maithili, Santali. So these were the official languages which were added in the 8th schedule in course of time. So 8th schedule, it speaks about the official languages of the union and of the states. As of now, we have 22 official languages which are mentioned in the 8th schedule. That's it about the 8th schedule. The next one is 9th schedule. 9th schedule. Article 31B. See, after India got independence on 15th August 1947, the state governments, in most of the states, Congress party was in power. One of the goals of the Congress party is to implement land reforms. So when land reform laws were made by the states for identifying the surplus land and to distribute it among the landless people, these laws came in conflict with the right to property, which is a fundamental right. As these laws were in conflict with fundamental right to property, many of these laws were being struck down as invalid by the High Court and Supreme Court. So by this time, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru felt that if something is not done, land reform will never be implemented in this country. So he has brought in the very first amendment to the Indian Constitution, inserting the 9th schedule dealt by Article 31B. So 9th schedule says, all the land reform laws which are made by the states. Why the states make the land reform laws? Because land is a subject in the state list. So Parliament doesn't have the competence to make laws on land reforms. Only the states have the competence to make the land reforms. All the land reform laws made by the state governments, if they are included in the 9th schedule, they enjoy immunity, protection from judicial review. So once the land reform laws are included in the 9th schedule under Article 31B, the High Court and the Supreme Court cannot exercise the power of judicial review, cannot invalidate these laws. This is the 9th schedule. But we had an important case in 2007. IR Coelho versus State of Tamil Nadu. This was a judgment of 9-judge bench. In 2007, in this case, in IR Coelho versus State of Tamil Nadu, the Supreme Court said, all the laws which are included in the 9th schedule, before 24th April 1973, they enjoy absolute immunity, which means the laws included in the 9th schedule on or before 24th April 1973, they enjoy complete protection from judicial review. Because it is on 24th April 1973, the Indian Supreme Court has come up with the doctrine of basic structure in Keshavananda Bharati case. In Keshavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala on 24th April 1973, a 13-judge bench of the Indian Supreme Court by 7:6 majority has laid down the doctrine of basic structure. This doctrine says Parliament cannot amend the basic features of the Indian Constitution by using its power under Article 368. So the power of the Indian Parliament to amend the Constitution under Article 368 is a limited power, not an unlimited power. So after the doctrine of basic structure has come into operation from 24th April 1973, in IR Coelho versus State of Tamil Nadu, the Supreme Court said all the laws which are included in the 9th schedule after 24th April 1973, they can be subjected to judicial review if they take away the basic features of the Indian Constitution. In other words, all the laws which are included in the 9th schedule on or before 24th April 1973, they enjoy absolute immunity, complete protection. But laws included in the 9th schedule after 24th April 1973, they enjoy only a partial protection. If they take away the basic features, then these amendments and the laws included in the 9th schedule can be subjected to judicial review. That's about the 9th schedule. The next one is 10th schedule. See, the 10th schedule of the Indian Constitution, it deals with the anti-defection law. So the 10th schedule was enacted in 1985 through the 52nd Amendment to the Indian Constitution. Then what is anti-defection law all about? So this law was enacted to provide stability to the governments both at the union and at the state level. So before 1985, India has witnessed a lot of political instability both at the union level and at the state level, because legislators who get elected on the symbol of one political party, they are switching their loyalty to another political party, and this Ayaram Gayaram culture led to the political instability of the governments. So by curbing defections, anti-defection law aimed at bringing stability to the governments. But unfortunately, because of the loopholes in the anti-defection law, this law has not remained quite useful in the last 4 decades of its existence, 95, 2005, 2015, 2002. Almost for 4 decades it has been in implementation. And the reason why the anti-defection law has not remained successful is, under the anti-defection law, the power to disqualify the legislators was given to the Speaker if it is Lok Sabha, Chairman if it is Rajya Sabha, Speaker if it is Legislative Assembly, Chairman if it is Legislative Council. And the Speaker and the Chairman, they belong to the party in power. So they acted in a partisan manner. And this is one problem. The second problem is, in the anti-defection law, there was no time limit within which the presiding officers has to act on the disqualification petitions. So because of this, the presiding officers have taken an unduly long time in deciding the disqualification petitions. And as a result, the law has miserably failed in its actual effect on the ground. That's about the 10th schedule, anti-defection law. The next one, 11th schedule. See, 11th schedule of the Indian Constitution was inserted in 1992 through the 73rd Amendment. The 73rd Amendment to the Indian Constitution deals with the Panchayat Raj institutions. So the 3-tier Panchayat Raj institutions were given constitutional recognition through the 73rd Constitutional Amendment Act. So this amendment also provided for 11th schedule. We all know, I just told you about the 7th schedule. The 7th schedule divides the powers between the center and the states. Similarly, 11th schedule divides the powers between the state government and the Panchayat Raj institutions. So in the 11th schedule, we have 29 items under Article 243G. So these are 29 items. They are the areas where the Panchayat Raj institutions were given the authority and powers. So the 29 items which are mentioned in the 11th schedule under Article 243G, these are the powers which are to be devolved to the Panchayat Raj institutions. And the problem with this Article 243G is the word used is may. In Article 243G, the word used is may, not shall, which means devolution of powers to the Panchayat Raj institutions is not mandatory. It is not compulsory for the states. They can either do it, or if they don't want to devolve powers, they can even keep silent. And as a result, in most of the states, though Panchayat Raj institutions were created, they are not adequately empowered. That's about the 11th schedule. The next one, 12th schedule. See, 12th schedule of the Indian Constitution was again inserted in 1992 through the 74th Amendment. And Article 243W, Article 243W of the Indian Constitution deals with the 12th schedule. So in the 12th schedule, we have 18 items. So these are the items which are to be devolved to the urban local governments. In India, we have three kinds of urban local governments: corporation, municipality, Nagara Panchayat. So the powers of these urban local governments, they were identified in the 12th schedule. 18 items were identified with respect to which the powers are to be devolved to urban local governments. Again, like the 11th schedule, here again in the 12th schedule in Article 243W, the word used is may, not shall. And as a result, the Constitution does not make it compulsory for the state governments to devolve powers to the urban local bodies. So they have the freedom and discretion whether to devolve them or not. And as a result, in most of these states, the urban local governments have remained weak. They are not adequately empowered. That's it about the 12th schedule. That's it about all the 12 schedules in the Indian Constitution. So we are done with 12 schedules of the Indian Constitution. The next one, parts of the Indian Constitution. See, the entire Indian Constitution is divided into several parts. If you take the Constitution of 1950, the original Indian Constitution, which came into force on 26th January 1950, it has got 22 parts. It had 22 parts then, but the Constitution which we have today, it has now 25 parts. Let's see what each part deals with. If you take Part 1, Part 1 of the Indian Constitution deals with the Union and its territory. Part 2 of the Indian Constitution deals with the citizenship from Articles 5 to 11. From Articles 5 to 11, so Part 2 deals with the citizenship from Articles 5 to 11. Then if you take the Part 1, as I said just now, it deals with the Union and its territory from Articles 1 to 4. The next one is Part 3. So I told you in the earlier video, fundamental rights, they lay the foundation for establishment of political democracy. So Part 3 of the Indian Constitution deals with the fundamental rights, which will realize political democracy. Then Articles 12 to 35, Articles 12 to 35, they deal with fundamental rights. The next one is Part 4. Part 4 of the Indian Constitution deals with the directive principles of state policy. I told that directive principles of state policy, implementation of directive principles of state policies will result in realizing social and economic democracy in this country. If you want to achieve social and economic equality in this country, we need to implement directive principles of state policy. That is dealt by Part 4. And the articles which deal with the Part 4 are from Articles 36 to 51. So Part 4 deals with the directive principles of state policy from Articles 36 to 51. Then we have Part 4A. So this Part 4A was not there in the original Indian Constitution of 1950. It was added to the Indian Constitution in 1976 through the 42nd Amendment. And Part 4A deals with the fundamental duties. So the idea of fundamental duties, it is borrowed from the Constitution of USSR. So there were 10 initially, now we have 11 fundamental duties which are mentioned in Part 4A. Part 4A. So there is only one article in Part 4A, that is 51A. In the next part, Part 5. So Part 5 of the Indian Constitution deals with the union government. So at the union level, you have the President, Vice President, Prime Minister, Council of Ministers, the Supreme Court, Comptroller and Auditor General. So all of these personalities and functionaries, they were dealt by Part 5. And the articles 52 to 151. So Part 5 of the Indian Constitution deals with the union government from articles 52 to 151. That is Part 5. The next one is Part 6. So Part 6 of the Indian Constitution deals with the states, the state government. We have Governor, Chief Minister, Council of Ministers, High Court, Advocate General, etc. So Part 6 of the Indian Constitution deals with the states from Articles 152 to 237. Articles 152 to 237. Then the next one is Part 7. See, Part 7 of the Indian Constitution, it's not there now. It was deleted through the 7th Constitutional Amendment Act. So, in the beginning, in the Constitution of India, we had fourfold classification of states. Part A, Part B, Part C, Part D. On the recommendations of the first States Reorganization Commission, this fourfold classification of states was given up. In its place, we have created two kinds of territories, states and union territories. So that's why we don't have Part 9. When we had it in the original Indian Constitution, it had dealt with the states in Part B of the first schedule. The next one is Part 8. Part 8 of the Indian Constitution deals with the union territories from Articles 239 to 243. I just told you that in India we have two kinds of territories. One is the states, the second one is union territories. In India we have a total of 8 union territories. So the administration of these union territories, they are laid down in Part 8. For example, for the Union Territory of Delhi, there was a special status. It was called National Capital Territory of Delhi. The 69th Amendment to the Indian Constitution has added two articles, 239AA and 239AB. So this amendment has provided for a legislative assembly to Delhi and also an elected government to Delhi. That's 239AA and 239AB. Similarly, we have Puducherry, we have Jammu and Kashmir. For these two union territories, you have a legislative assembly and also the Council of Ministers. So that was again dealt with by Part 8. So Part 8 of the Indian Constitution deals with the union territories from Articles 239 to 243. The next one, Part 9. Part 9 of the Indian Constitution was added to the Indian Constitution in 1992 through the 73rd Amendment. See, Part 9 deals with the Panchayat Raj institutions. A total of 16 articles were added to the 73rd Amendment. And the articles which Part 9 deals with is from Articles 243 to 243O. Similarly, Part 9A. Part 9A is again inserted later on in 1992 through the 74th Amendment to the Indian Constitution. So in Part 9A, you have a total of 18 articles. And Part 9A, it deals with urban local governments, that is the municipalities. We have corporation, municipality and Nagara Panchayat. It has a total of 18 articles. Article 243P to Article 243ZG. Part 9B. See, Part 9B, it deals with the cooperative societies. Part 9B was again added through the 97th Amendment to the Indian Constitution, deals with the cooperative societies from Articles 243ZH to Article 243ZT. Next one, Part 10. So I just told you about the 5th schedule and the 6th schedule areas. The 5th and the 6th schedule areas are dealt by Part 10 and the articles are 244 and 244A. The next one, Part 11. Part 11 deals with the center-state administrative relations and the center-state legislative relations. Center-state legislative and administrative relations, they were dealt by Part 11 of the Indian Constitution from Articles 245 to 263. From Articles 245 to 263. Then Part 12. Part 12 of the Indian Constitution deals with center-state financial relations. And the articles from Article 264 to 300A. Articles 264 to 300A, they deal with the center-state financial relations, finance, property, contracts and suits. The next one is Part 13. Part 13, it deals with the trade and commerce throughout the territory of India. So this was a provision which was borrowed from the Australian Constitution. And the articles which deal with the Part 13 are Articles 301 to 307. Articles 301 to 307, they are dealt by Part 13 and they deal with the trade commerce throughout the territory of India. The next one is Part 14. Part 14 of the Indian Constitution deals with civil services. It deals with public service commissions. In India we have Union Public Service Commission, State Public Service Commission, Joint Public Service Commission. So they are dealt by Part 14 from Articles 308 to 323. From Articles 308 to 323. The next one is Part 14A. Part 14A, it deals with the tribunals. When Mrs. Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister, through the 42nd Amendment to the Indian Constitution, she had inserted two articles, 323A and 323B. 323A dealt with administrative tribunals, 323B dealt with the tribunals for other purposes, that is Part 14A. So Part 14A was added in course of time in 1976 through the 42nd Amendment. The next one is Part 15. Part 15 deals with elections. For example, in India, we have two kinds of election commissions, Election Commission of India, State Election Commission. Election Commission of India conducts elections to the office of the President, Vice President, Parliament and State Legislature. So all these aspects were discussed in Part 15 from Articles 324 to 329A. Articles 324 to 329A, they deal with elections under Part 15. The next one is Part 16. See, Part 16 deals with the constitutional safeguards for certain classes. For example, in India we have reservations for the tribals, for the Dalits in Lok Sabha and legislative assemblies. So such kind of safeguards for Anglo-Indians, for tribals, for Dalits, for backward classes, for economically weaker sections, reservations for women in Lok Sabha and legislative assembly, National SC Commission, National ST Commission, they were all dealt by Part 16 from Articles 330 to 342. The next one, Part 18. See, Part 18, it deals with official languages. I just told that 8th schedule of the Indian Constitution deals with 22 official languages of both the Union and the states. So there is one schedule with respect to official languages. There is one part in the Constitution of India dealing with official languages. So this Part 17 of the Indian Constitution deals with official languages from Articles 343 to 351. Articles 343 to 351 deal with official language. The next one is Part 18. Part 18 deals with emergency provisions from Articles 352 to 360. I told you in the earlier video that though the Constitution of India is federal, depending upon the circumstances, it can be both unitary and federal. In normal times, we are a federation. In emergency situations, we can become a unitary constitution. This does not need any formal amendment to the Indian Constitution. So these things are laid down and discussed in detail in Part 18, emergency provisions. We have three kinds of emergencies: national emergency, state emergency and financial emergency. Then Part 19. Part 19, it deals with immunities enjoyed by the President and Governor, 361 to 367. Articles 361 to 367, they deal with miscellaneous provisions. For any official act done by the President and the Governor, they are immune from criminal action. Similarly, the privileges, parliamentary privileges, the privileges, they were also dealt by this Part 19. Then Part 20. Part 20 deals with only one article, Article 368. So Article 368 of the Indian Constitution empowers the Indian Parliament to amend the Constitution. So as I have just told you, on 24th April 1973, the Supreme Court said that the power of the Indian Parliament to amend the Constitution, to modify the Constitution under Article 368, this is not an absolute power but only a limited power. So Article 368, it is dealt by Part 20 of the Indian Constitution. Then Part 21. See, Part 21 of the Indian Constitution deals with the temporary, transitional and special provisions. For example, in India, there are some states which enjoy special status, special provisions, special safeguards. For example, Gujarat, the backward regions in Gujarat like Saurashtra and Kutch, then Maharashtra, Marathwada region. So like this, some of the states which are given certain special constitutional safeguards, they are dealt by Part 21. Then Part 22, it speaks about Hindi, to make the Constitution of India available in Hindi as an authoritative text. So there shall be an authoritative text of the Constitution in Hindi language. That was dealt by Part 22 from Articles 393. Articles 393. So that's it about the parts of the Indian Constitution. So initially we had 22 parts, now we have 25 parts. In all the kinds of exams, including the UPSC Prelims exam, there are questions on facts. There could be statements in the question that so and so part deals with the so and so provisions. So unless you know which part deals with the what subject matter, the possibility of you getting the question right is remote. So it is necessary for you to know what all the 12 schedules deal with and what all the 25 parts deal with. So the next topic is Union and its territory. Union and its territory. See, Part 1 of the Indian Constitution deals with the Union and its territory from Articles 1 to 4. Articles 1 to 4. If you take Article 1, it says that India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. So in the Constituent Assembly, there was a difference of opinion with respect to the name to be given to the country. Some suggested the modern name India, some suggested the ancient name Bharat. So as a matter of compromise between these two groups, both words were used. India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. So the expression used in Article 1 is union of states. Here the expression used is not federation of states. Then the question is, why, though the Constitution of India is a federal, though the Supreme Court of India said that federalism is a basic feature, why the word federal was deliberately avoided in the text of the Indian Constitution? If you read the entire text of the Indian Constitution, you don't see the reference to the word federal anywhere in the country. The reason given by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is, if you compare the Indian Federation with the Federation of USA, so United States of America is an example for federal constitution. The first federal constitution in the world is American Constitution. But remember, the American federal constitution is created by the states through agreements among them. But Indian Constitution is not the result of agreement among the states. And the Indian Constitution is made federal for administrative convenience. So Dr. B.R. Ambedkar felt that if the word federal is used in the text of the Constitution, it may give an impression that the states have a right to break away from the union. But B.R. Ambedkar felt that the union is indestructible, which means the states do not have the right to break away from the union. So to make this thing very clear to the states, to make it absolutely clear to the states that they don't have the right to break away from the union, the expression union of states was used in Article 1. Then again, if you compare USA and India, in United States of America, the union is indestructible, which means the states don't have the right to break away from the union. This is similar. Both in India and in United States of America, the union is indestructible, which means the states don't have the right to break away from the union. But if you take the Constitution of USA, the Constitution of USA which came into force in the year 1789, this constitution is silent on the issue that whether the states have the right to break away from the union. And if you see the history of American Constitution, between 1861 and 1865 there was a civil war on the issue of slavery. Northern states wanted the abolition of slavery, southern states wanted to continue the issue of slavery. On this particular issue, the southern states have declared independence. They broke away from the union. Later on, the matter went to the Supreme Court. In one of the cases, Texas versus White, after the Civil War, after the American Civil War, in one of the cases which went before the American Supreme Court, Texas versus White, in this case the Supreme Court has clarified. The American Supreme Court has clarified that even in America, the states don't have the right to break away from the union, which means in America, it took a civil war to conclude that the states don't have the right to break away from the union. But Dr. B.R. Ambedkar wanted to make it absolutely clear to the states by not referring the word federal. He wanted to tell to the state governments that they don't have the right to break away from the union. So both in India and USA, the union is indestructible. But when it comes to the states, in India, the states are destructible. But in America, the states are indestructible. What do you mean by that? In India, the boundaries of the states can be altered without the consent of the states. That's the meaning of destructible states. In United States of America, the boundaries of the states cannot be altered without the consent of the states. That's the meaning of indestructible states. Then in Article 1, there are other terms which were used. One is India, that is Bharat, shall be union of states. The next expression is territory of India. Territory of India. The other one, acquired territory. Acquired territories. So if you compare the expression territory of India with union of states, the expression territory of India has a much wider meaning. India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. This expression means it speaks about all the 28 states which are in a relationship with the central government. So this expression union of states doesn't speak about the union territories. It doesn't speak about acquired territories. On the contrary, the expression territory of India is much wider. It includes within itself the states, the union territories, and even acquired territories if any. For example, we have acquired Goa, Daman and Diu, Pondicherry from foreign countries. From Portugal, we have acquired Goa, Daman and Diu. From France, we have acquired Puducherry. So these are called acquired territories. Earlier we had acquired territories. Later on they were made into union territories. Goa was made into a state. As of now, today, we don't have acquired territories. So that's the difference between acquired territories, states, union territories. Then, as I said earlier, Schedule 1, the first schedule of the Indian Constitution speaks about the list of states and the territorial extent of states. It also speaks about the list of union territories and the territorial extent. That's it about Article 1. The next article is Article 2. Article 2. Article 2, it speaks about admitting and establishing new states. So there was a difference between Article 2 and Article 3. Article 2 speaks about admitting new states into Indian Union which are not part of territory of India. For example, Goa earlier was not part of Indian Union. So it was admitted into India, later on it was made into a state. Sikkim, earlier it was not part of India. Later it was made part of India and was established as a state. The difference between Article 2 and Article 3 is, Article 3 speaks about reorganizing the states which are part of the territory of India. The existing states, they can be reorganized under Article 3. But Article 2 speaks about establishment of new states which are not part of territory of India. It speaks about admission of new states into Indian Union. So Article 2 says new states can be admitted, new states can be established, and these new states, they are not part of the territory of India till then. And this can be done by Parliament by an ordinary law. The next one, Article 3. So Article 3 speaks about reorganization of states. Then what do you mean by states reorganization? It means many things. For example, recently Jammu and Kashmir, which was earlier a state, was converted into two union territories, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. So if a state is converted into union territory, that is a state's reorganization. If a union territory is converted into a state, that is also state's reorganization. Goa was earlier a union territory, now it was a state. If you create one state by merging two or three states, that is also state's reorganization. If you break down one state into two or more states, that is also state's reorganization. If you increase the area of the state, that is also state's reorganization. If you diminish the area of the state, that is also called state's reorganization. If you alter the name of the state, if you alter the name of the union territory, that is also state's reorganization. So the reorganization of the states under Article 3 means all these: increasing the area of the state, decreasing the area of the state, changing the name of the state, changing the name of the union territory, converting a union territory into state, converting a state into union territory, merging two or three states into one state, or breaking one state into multiple states. All this comes under definition of reorganization of states under Article 3. As I said just now, in India, we use the expression destructible states. In India, the states are destructible, which means the boundaries of the states can be altered even without the consent of the states. But this cannot be done under the American Constitution. That's why under the American Constitution, the states are indestructible. Under the Indian Constitution, the states are destructible. Then why did you provide for such a provision? When India was under the British rule, most of the British Indian provinces and most of the princely states, they are multilingual in character. But there was a strong demand for reorganizing the states on the basis of language. So keeping in mind the demand for reorganization of states on the basis of language, the framers of the Indian Constitution felt that in future the territory of India need to be reorganized, maybe on the linguistic lines. So if it is not made easy to do that job, then that will create a lot of problem. That's the reason why the reorganization of the states under the Indian Constitution is made very easy. The Indian Parliament, through an ordinary law, by simple majority, can reorganize the states. But to protect the interests of the states, there are certain safeguards which are put in place. The Constitution says a bill which is meant for reorganizing the states can be introduced in the Parliament only with the prior recommendation of the President. That's one safeguard. Why the recommendation of the President is necessary? There is a reason for that. The President of India, he represents not only the nation, he also represents the states, which means the President has a constitutional duty to protect the interests of the nation and also the interests of the states. Why? The reason is the President is elected by an electoral college. Electoral college is the body choosing the President of India. So the President is chosen by an electoral college consisting of elected members of Parliament, elected members of all the legislative assemblies in this country. So the President represents the nation as well as the states. So a bill which is meant for reorganizing a particular state, if it has to be introduced in the Parliament, in either house, the prior recommendation of the President is required. And even before the bill can be introduced in the Parliament, there is one more constitutional requirement. The President has to send this bill to the concerned state legislature for obtaining its views. But the views expressed by the concerned state legislature are not binding on the President. So it means the Union government through the Indian Parliament can reorganize the states with a lot of ease by enacting an ordinary law, by making use of simple majority. So this flexibility was incorporated in the Indian Constitution, keeping in mind the requirements of reorganizing the country's territory in tune with the demands like the linguistic demands. That's about Article 3 and the constitutional requirements under Article 3. Then Article 4. Article 4 says that the laws made by the Indian Parliament under Article 2 and the laws made by Indian Parliament under Article 3, they are not deemed to be constitutional amendments under Article 368. And to implement the laws made by Indian Parliament under Article 2 and Article 3, there is a need for amending the first schedule and the fourth schedule. So Article 4 speaks about the need to amend the first and the fourth schedules whenever there is establishment of new states or admission of new states or when the states are reorganized. That's it about Article 4. So that's about all the 4 articles which deal with the union and its territory from Articles 1 to 4. The next one is reorganization of states since independence. In the last 75 years, how the political map of India has underwent changes, that we will look into. Remember, in the original constitution of 1950, there was a fourfold classification of states: Part A, Part B, Part C and Part D states. Remember, way back in 1920, Indian National Congress has promised reorganizing the British Indian provinces on the basis of language. Later on, Andhra Mahasabha, which was established for creating a separate state for Telugu speaking people, also demanded reorganizing the states on the basis of language. Before independence, Odisha is the first state which is created on the basis of language. Later on, after India got independence on 15th August 1947, the Telugu speaking areas, they are part of Madras British Indian province. Because of the domination of Tamilians over the Telugu speaking areas, there was a strong demand for creating a separate state for Telugu speaking people. And after the death of Putti Sriramulu, after being on fast for 56 days, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru formally announced the creation of the first state to be formed on the basis of language after India's independence, that is Andhra state. Andhra state is the first state to be created on the basis of language on October 1st, 1953. So with the creation of Andhra state, the demand for reorganizing the states on the basis of language, it became very vocal in the entire length and breadth of the country. So to look into this particular issue, several committees were appointed by Government of India from time to time. The first one, Dar Commission. This was done in 1948. The next one is a JVP committee. This was in 1949. The next one is SRC, States Reorganization Commission, 1953. If you take the first one, Dar Commission, S.K. Dar was the chairman of this commission. That's why it is called S.K. Dar Commission. The other name is Linguistic Provinces Commission. So this commission was established by Constituent Assembly. So Dar Commission, which was formed to look into the demand for reorganizing the states on the basis of language, has rejected reorganizing the states on the basis of language. Later on, one more committee was appointed, that is a JVP committee in 1949. So this committee had 3 members: Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Pattabhi Sitaramaiah. That's why it is called JVP committee. Even JVP committee also rejected reorganizing the states on the basis of language, with the exception of Andhra state. So when it came to the creation of the state of Andhra, it favored creation of Andhra state on the condition that the Telugus should not make a claim over the city of Madras. So the reason why initially there was a rejection of reorganization of states on the basis of language is, we all know that at the time of partition, 1 lakh people from both sides, 1 lakh women from both sides, they were abducted, they were raped. Similarly, 10 lakh people, they got killed in the name of religion. So communal rights. The situation was very sensitive. So in the 1948, that is the period in which the country has witnessed the trauma of partition, lakhs of people got killed, we are just settling down as a nation. So Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was not against reorganizing the states on the basis of language. But the problem of Nehru is the timing of reorganizing the states on the basis of language. He felt that 1948 is not the right time for reorganizing states on the basis of language. He feels that maybe in course of time, once all the issues of the young nation get settled down, the reorganization of states on the basis of language can be taken up. But if immediately if the demand for reorganization of the states on the basis of language is taken up, that may destabilize India. So that was the a strong opinion of Dr. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. That's why both the Dar Commission and also the JVP committee rejected reorganizing the states on the basis of language. Then subsequently, as I said, after the creation of Andhra state on October 1st, 1953, the first state to be created on the basis of language, throughout the country, throughout the length and breadth of the country, the demand for reorganizing the states on the basis of language became very, very strong. So to look into this matter very dispassionately, Jawaharlal Nehru government has announced the formation of the first SRC, First States Reorganization Commission. So this commission was headed by Fazl Ali, a former judge of the Supreme Court. So that's why it is also called Fazl Ali Commission. The other two members of the States Reorganization Commission are H.N. Kunjru, Hrudayanath Kunjru and K.M. Panikkar. So this first States Reorganization Commission has looked into demands for reorganizing the states on the basis of language. So in principle, it has agreed to reorganize the states on the basis of language with a few exceptions. It rejected creating the state of Andhra Pradesh by merging the Telugu speaking area with Andhra state. It also rejected bifurcation of Bombay, which was a bilingual state. With a few exceptions of this kind, it favored reorganizing the states on the basis of language. So on the basis of recommendations of States Reorganization Commission, Indian Parliament has enacted States Reorganization Act 1956. So this legislation has done away with the fourfold classification of states: Part A, Part B, Part C, Part D. So the territory of India was broadly classified into two categories: states and union territories. So the States Reorganization Act of 1956, it has created 14 states and 6 union territories. So to give implementation to this law, even the constitution was amended. The 7th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1956 has done away with the fourfold classification of states: Part A, Part B, Part C, Part D states. So in 1956, through the States Reorganization Act of 1956, 14 states were created and 6 union territories were made. Later on, in 1960, the bilingual state of Bombay was bifurcated into Maharashtra and Gujarat. Later in 1966, Haryana was carved out of Punjab. In 1971, the state of Himachal Pradesh was formed. In Northeast India, in 1963, in 1972, in 1986, the entire Northeast India was reorganized to meet the aspirations of the tribals in this particular region. Today we have in Northeast India 7 states. So the massive reorganization of states in Northeast India, though they are not economically viable, is to fulfill the political aspirations of the different tribal groups in Northeast India. Then in the year 2000, 3 more states were created: Uttarakhand, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh. Uttarakhand was created from Uttar Pradesh, Jharkhand was created from Bihar, Chhattisgarh is created from Madhya Pradesh. So later on in 2014, Telangana was created from the erstwhile state of Andhra Pradesh, and in 2019, the latest episode of reorganization, Jammu and Kashmir, which was earlier a state, was reorganized into 2 union territories: Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. This is how the political map of India has undergone change in the last 75 years. And after the linguistic reorganization of states in 1956 and the recommendations of the Fazl Ali Commission, the unity and integrity of India further got strengthened. So contrary to what Nehru believed that if reorganization of states is taken up on the basis of language, that may destabilize India. That was the fear which Nehru had. But the subsequent events have proved Nehru wrong. The linguistic reorganization of states in 1956, instead of undermining the unity and integrity of the country, they further strengthened the unity and integrity of India. So the flexibility with which the states have been reorganized in India, they speak about the wisdom of the framers of the Indian Constitution. But there are some criticisms. When Telangana was created out of the erstwhile state of Andhra Pradesh, it was criticized because this was the only example wherein, without a consensus, one state was carved out of the existing state, and they created a lot many problems after bifurcation. So that's about the union and its territory and the reorganization of states. Now let's get into the topic of amendment of the Constitution and the doctrine of basic structure. See, if you take the Constitution of India, this I told you even in the first video. Unlike the other classical federations which are very rigid, the Constitution of India was made flexible by the framers of the Indian Constitution, keeping in mind the need for adapting the Constitution to the changing circumstances. If you want to amend the American Constitution, it's very difficult. In the last 220 years of American Constitution, it has been amended only 28 times. But in the last 75 years, the Indian Constitution was amended more than 106 times. So we have designed the Constitution of India in such a way that it is capable of changing according to the changing circumstances. So this concept is called as living document. Let's discuss this for some time. So there are two concepts, originalism versus Constitution as a living document. Originalism versus Constitution as a living document. Indian Constitution was called a living document. Why is it called a living document? So the Constitution of India is capable of changing to the changing circumstances. This was designed in such a way. For example, Article 368 of the Indian Constitution allows the Indian Parliament to make changes to the Indian Constitution to suit it to the changing circumstances. Similarly, the Indian Supreme Court, through using its power of interpretation, can also change the Indian Constitution. For example, the Supreme Court, by using the power to interpret the Constitution, has created collegium. Now in India, the collegium makes appointments to the Supreme Court and the High Courts. So the intention behind creating the system of collegium is to protect the independence of judiciary. So collegium is a creation of the Indian Supreme Court, not the creation of the Parliament. Similarly, the Supreme Court has come up with the doctrine of basic structure again to limit the powers of the Indian Parliament to amend the Constitution, thereby protecting the basic features of the Indian Constitution. So Indian Constitution is an example for a living document. A living document means a document which is capable of changing to the changing circumstances. So this feature, you see this in the Indian Constitution. The Indian Constitution has endured for the last 75 years. Many Western political thinkers, they said about the future of India, that India is a land of diversity in terms of religion, language, ethnicity. So it is very difficult to keep this country united. They said that India will break up into several Indias very soon. We proved them wrong. The reason is the Constitution was designed and enacted to be strong enough to hold the country together. So that's why we say the Constitution is a living document, enduring document. It will continue to endure even for the next half a century and a century. Unlike Indian Constitution, the American Constitution is not flexible to change to the changing circumstances. So this concept is explained by using originalism. So the concept of originalism says, if the provisions of the Indian Constitution are interpreted not in the light of the present circumstances, but if a constitution in any country is interpreted in the light of the views of the framers of the Constitution, then that is called originalist interpretation. For example, today, if we try to interpret the provisions of the Indian Constitution on the basis of what the framers of the Indian Constitution have believed in, then that is called originalist interpretation. That's how the Supreme Court does it in the United States of America. So our Indian Supreme Court and the High Courts, of course, they look into the views of the framers of the Indian Constitution, but that's not any constraint on the interpretation of Indian Constitution. The Indian Supreme Court is capable of interpreting the provisions of the Indian Constitution not only in the light of the views of the members of the Constituent Assembly, but even otherwise. So they can interpret the provisions of the Indian Constitution in the light of the changed circumstances. For example, in 2018, we had an important judgment of the Indian Supreme Court, Navatej Singh Johar versus Union of India. In this case, the Supreme Court has recognized homosexuality as a constitutional right. Among the adults, in private, through mutual consent, homosexuality is not a crime. Again, in case Puttaswamy versus Union of India in 2017 judgment, the Supreme Court said right to privacy is a fundamental right. So women who were not earlier allowed into the temple in Shabarimala and again in Shani Shinganapur temple. Now the women are being allowed entry into these temples. They all speaks about the changing circumstances in India. So Indian constitution is a living document capable of changing to the changing needs. But if you compare the Indian constitution with American constitution, the American constitution is not capable of changing to the changing circumstances. It is very rigid. That's what we say originalist interpretation. Then when it comes to the amendment of the constitution, how the constitution of India can be amended. There are three ways. See, there are two kinds of constitutions. One is flexible constitution, the other one is rigid constitution. If the constitution is amended very easily by simple majority, that is flexible constitution. Constitution of UK is an example. If it is very, very difficult to amend the constitution, then that is a rigid constitution. America is an example for rigid constitution. But if you take the constitution of India, it is both rigid and flexible. So the constitution, the amending procedure prescribed in the Indian constitution, it is a mix of rigidity and flexibility. The constitution of India can be amended three ways. The first one is by simple majority. Indian Parliament by simple majority can amend most of the provisions of the Indian constitution. The second method is fundamental rights and the directive principles of state policy can be amended by the Indian Parliament alone. Participation of the states is not required, but it needs special majority. A majority of the total membership and 2/3 of the members present and voting. This is the majority with which fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy are amended. There is a third method of amending the constitution. The federal provisions of the Indian constitution can be amended by the parliament along with the states. Parliament shall agree by special majority, that is a majority of the total membership and 2/3 of the members present and voting. In addition, half of the states must also agree. So in such a situation, these are the three methods of amending the constitution. The first one is amendment by simple majority. The second one is amendment by special majority by parliament alone. The third one is amendment by both parliament and the state legislatures. Parliament shall do it by special majority and the states must do it by simple majority. So these are three ways of amending the constitution. But if you take the Constitution of United States of America, every amendment can be done by the American Parliament by special majority. In addition to that, every amendment must be given approval by 3/4 states. That's why changing the American Constitution has become very, very difficult. In its existence of last 220 years, the American Constitution has been amended only 28 times. So that speaks volumes about the rigidity of the American Constitution. Then what is the procedure laid down to amend the Indian Constitution? As I said, Article 368 of the Indian Constitution speaks about the procedure for amending the Indian Constitution. A constitutional amendment bill, which is meant for amending the Constitution, it can be introduced in Lok Sabha or it can be introduced in Rajya Sabha. This bill can be introduced by either the minister in the government or even a member of the parliament who is not a minister. And remember, a constitutional amendment bill must be given approval by the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha separately by special majority. There is no provision for joint sitting. Then in addition to that, the president is bound to give his assent to a constitutional amendment bill. He cannot say no to constitutional amendment bill. Then this doctrine of basic structure. So doctrine of basic structure is a creation of the Indian Supreme Court on 24th April 1973. So what is the background for this doctrine of basic structure? So there were several cases. The first one is Shankari Prasad case. So this is evolution of doctrine of basic structure. See, I told you just now in the beginning, when the states made land reform laws to implement land reforms, it came in conflict with fundamental right to property. When it came in conflict with fundamental right to property, the land reforms were struck down as invalid. So to overcome this difficulty, Jawaharlal Nehru government made the first amendment to the Indian Constitution. The first Constitutional Amendment Act has created a new schedule under the Indian Constitution, that is the 9th schedule under Article 31B. So this has put limitations on the fundamental right to property. 9th schedule says all the land reform laws, if they are included in the 9th schedule, they enjoy protection from judicial review. They cannot be struck down as invalid. So the first Constitutional Amendment Act was a challenger before the Supreme Court in this case, Shankari Prasad case. Shankari Prasad versus Union of India. In this case, the first amendment to the Indian Constitution was challenged. In this case, the Supreme Court said the first amendment to the Indian Constitution is constitutionally valid. There is one article in the Indian Constitution, Article 13, Clause 2. This Article 13, Clause 2 says, the state shall not make any law which takes away fundamental right. So here what do you mean by the expression law? So the Supreme Court in Shankari Prasad case said that fundamental rights cannot be amended by ordinary law, but fundamental rights can be amended by a Constitutional Amendment Act under Article 368. So 9th schedule was added through an amendment to the Constitution under Article 368. So the Supreme Court said the first amendment to the Indian Constitution, which has restricted the right to property, is constitutionally valid. The next one is Sajjan Singh case. Sajjan Singh versus State of Rajasthan. In this case, the Supreme Court has repeated its judgment in Shankari Prasad case. So in Sajjan Singh versus State of Rajasthan, in this case, the Supreme Court said, Parliament has the right to amend fundamental rights under Article 368 through a Constitutional Amendment Act. Then later on, in Golaknath case, in Golaknath versus State of Punjab in 1967, a 11-judge bench by 6:5 majority said, under Article 368, there is only procedure but not power. Article 368 doesn't confer power on the Indian Parliament to amend the Constitution. So in other words, the Supreme Court in Golaknath case said that fundamental rights are permanent, sacrosanct and immutable. They cannot be amended. Parliament doesn't have the power under Article 368 to amend the fundamental rights. So if at all the fundamental rights are to be amended, a new constituent assembly has to be created. So to overcome the judgment of the Supreme Court in Golaknath case, Indian Parliament has brought amendments to the Indian Constitution through the 24th and 25th Amendment. So when these amendments were challenged before the Supreme Court again, in the next case, Keshwananda Bharati case, in Keshwananda Bharati case, the Supreme Court said, Parliament can amend fundamental rights, but without violating the basic features. So it is the Keshwananda Bharati case which is a historic case, because for the first time the Supreme Court said that the power of Indian Parliament to amend the Constitution under Article 368, it is not an unlimited power, it is a limited power. Then what are the limitations? In the Constitution of India, there are certain features which are very important, fundamental, basic, essential. So these features cannot be taken away even through a Constitutional Amendment Act under Article 368. So in Keshwananda Bharati case, the Supreme Court said, Parliament has the power under Article 368 to amend the Constitution. So it means it has rejected the judgment of the Golaknath case, judgment of the Supreme Court in Golaknath case. But the Supreme Court said there are limitations on the amending power of the Indian Parliament. That is called the doctrine of basic structure. So doctrine of basic structure was laid down in Keshwananda Bharati case. And to overcome the judgment of the Supreme Court in Keshwananda Bharati case, again Parliament has brought in the 42nd Amendment. The 42nd Amendment to the Indian Constitution said that there is nothing like basic structure doctrine which can put limitations on the power of the Indian Parliament. So this amendment, 42nd Amendment said, Parliament has the power under Article 368 to amend any provision of the Indian Constitution, including the basic features. And such an amendment cannot be questioned in any court of law. So this 42nd Amendment was again challenged before Minerva Mills case. In Minerva Mills case, the Supreme Court said, it has repeated what it said in Keshwananda Bharati case. It has struck down portions of the 42nd Amendment. In Minerva Mills case, the Supreme Court said that the power of the Indian Parliament to amend the Constitution under Article 368 is a limited power, it is not an unlimited power. The basic features of the Indian Constitution cannot be taken away by taking away the basic feature. So that's how the doctrine of basic structure has evolved in India. The next topic is emergency provisions under the Indian Constitution. So I said that the Indian Constitution, though it is federal, it is flexible constitution. For example, if you take all the classical federations like the Constitution of USA, the Constitution of Australia, the Constitution of Swiss Federation, they are in a tight mold of federalism, which means when the circumstances necessitate, these constitutions can never become unitary. They are always federal and rigid. So the framers of the Indian Constitution have designed our Constitution in such a way that it has got inbuilt flexibility to deal with whatever the circumstance is. For example, the Indian Constitution, unlike the American Constitution, can be both federal and unitary. In normal times it is federal. In emergency situation it can be unitary. That is the inbuilt flexibility. This doesn't need any formal amendment. So the emergency provisions of the Indian Constitution, they were discussed from articles 352 to 360. And there are three kinds of emergencies. National emergency. See, Part 18 of the Indian Constitution deals with emergency provisions from articles 352 to 360. National emergency, state emergency, financial emergency. Financial emergency. If you take the first one, national emergency. See, national emergency can be declared on three grounds: war, external aggression, and armed rebellion. If national emergency is declared on the ground of war and external aggression, it is called external emergency. If national emergency is declared on the ground of armed rebellion, it is called internal emergency. Article 352 speaks about national emergency. In the original Indian Constitution, one of the grounds for declaration of national emergency is internal disturbance. So in 1975, when Mrs. Indira Gandhi declared internal emergency and abused the emergency powers, through the 44th Amendment to the Indian Constitution in 1978, the word internal disturbance is replaced with armed rebellion to prevent possible misuse of emergency powers in the future. Then, how the national emergency can be declared? Under the Indian Constitution, the President can declare national emergency on the advice of the Union Cabinet headed by Prime Minister, on the written advice. In the original Indian Constitution, this was not clearly spelled out. Again, in 1975, Mrs. Indira Gandhi advised the then President Fakhruddin Ali Ahmad to declare national emergency without consulting the Cabinet. So to prevent the possible misuse of such power, we all know that India is a parliamentary democracy. The President shall act only on the advice of the entire Cabinet headed by Prime Minister. So merely on the oral advice of the Prime Minister, the President cannot declare national emergency. So again, 44th Amendment to the Indian Constitution said that the President can declare national emergency on the written advice of the entire Cabinet headed by Prime Minister. Then, who can approve the national emergency? The Indian Constitution says national emergency declared by the President of India can continue in force only for a month. Within a month, the Parliament shall agree by special majority. Both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha shall give approval to the national emergency by special majority. A majority of the total membership and 2/3 of the members present and voting. This was again inserted through the 44th Amendment. Earlier, it was enough to approve national emergency by the Parliament by simple majority, that too within 2 months. But now the period was reduced from 2 months to 1 month, and the approval is not by simple majority but by special majority. This was again inserted through 44th Amendment to the Indian Constitution. Then, once national emergency is declared, it can continue in force for a period of 6 months. After every 6 months, Parliament shall give approval. So repeated parliamentary approval every 6 months is again one more requirement. This was again added by 44th Amendment. Earlier, if a national emergency is declared once, it can continue for indefinite time. But the present Constitution says once national emergency is declared, it can continue initially for 6 months. If the Parliament approves it, again it will continue for 6 months. So with repeated parliamentary approvals, national emergency can continue for any length of time. And then national emergency can be declared either throughout the country or in part of the territory of the country. And the power of the Indian President to declare national emergency can be subjected to judicial review. Then what are the consequences of declaring national emergency? Once national emergency is declared, as I said earlier, the Constitution of India, which is federal, becomes unitary. So when you take the impact on center-state relations, in normal times, the union government can give directions to the states only on certain specified matters. But when national emergency is in operation, the union government can give directions to the states on any matter. In addition to that, once national emergency is in operation, Parliament can make laws on all the items in the state list. The President can issue ordinances on the subjects in the state list. The distribution of financial resources between the center and the states can be either suspended or reduced. So this is the impact on center-state relations. Then if you take the impact on the state governments, the executive government in the states is not dismissed, it is not suspended. The executive branch of the government in every state will continue. Similarly, the legislative power of the state legislatures is also not suspended. So theoretically, along with the central government, the state governments will continue to remain in power, but they become completely subordinated to the central government. Then what will happen to the duration of the Lok Sabha and the legislative assemblies? Once a national emergency is in operation, the tenure of the Lok Sabha can be extended through a law made by the Parliament for 1 year at a time. Similarly, if necessary, the tenure of the legislative assembly can also be extended every time 1 year through a law made by Parliament. So when national emergency is in operation, the tenures of Lok Sabha and legislative assembly can be extended, but this needs a parliamentary law. Then what is the impact on fundamental rights? So there are two articles which deal with impact on fundamental rights, Article 358, Article 359. Article 358 speaks about Article 19. Article 359 speaks about all of the other fundamental rights excepting 20 and 21. So when national emergency is declared, all the fundamental rights guaranteed by Article 19, fundamental right to freedom, they get automatically suspended for the entire duration of national emergency. But the 44th Amendment has made a change. The change is the fundamental rights guaranteed by Article 19 will be automatically suspended only during external emergency. So when national emergency is declared on the ground of war and external aggression, the fundamental rights guaranteed by Article 19 are automatically suspended. But if national emergency is declared on the ground of armed rebellion, the fundamental rights guaranteed by Article 19 are not suspended. The next one, when it comes to the other fundamental rights, the rights are not suspended. Only the enforcement of the fundamental rights are suspended, which means theoretically the rights are available. Here again, the 44th Amendment of the Indian Constitution said, with respect to other fundamental rights, the enforcement can be suspended, but the exceptions are Article 20 and 21. Even when national emergency is in operation, the fundamental rights guaranteed by Article 20 and 21, the enforcement of these fundamental rights cannot be suspended. And the enforcement of all other fundamental rights other than 20, 21 and 19 can be suspended either for the entire duration or for a limited period. So this is the impact on fundamental rights. Then who can withdraw national emergency? So the national emergency can be withdrawn by the President through a proclamation, or there is other way. So if 1/10 of the members of the Lok Sabha give a motion to the Speaker if it is in session, or to the President if it is not in session, then the Speaker or the President will convene the special session of the Lok Sabha. If Lok Sabha passes a resolution by simple majority to discontinue the national emergency, then the President is bound to discontinue the national emergency. So far in the country, national emergency was declared 3 times. The first time in 1962, it continued up to 1968. So in 1965, when India had war with Pakistan, the need for declaring national emergency has not come up because already the national emergency which was declared in 1962 continued up to 1968. The second time when national emergency was declared is in 1971, at the time of liberation of Bangladesh. The third time when national emergency was declared was in 1971, 1975. The first two are external national emergencies. The third one is internal national emergency. The second and third national emergencies were revoked in 1977. That's it about the national emergency. The second kind of emergency which was discussed in the Constitution is President rule. This is also called state emergency, constitutional emergency. Then what is President rule? So Article 355 says it is the duty of the Union government to protect the states from external aggression and internal disturbance and to ensure that administration in every state is carried on in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. There is one more article which says Article 365. Article 365 says, if a direction given by the union government is not implemented by the state, then that amounts to constitutional breakdown. Then Article 356 says, if there is constitutional breakdown, then the president can declare president rule. So Article 356 deals with the president rule, state emergency, constitutional emergency. Then what do you mean by constitutional breakdown? It means many things. Say for example, if there is breakdown of law and order in a state on a large scale, people are getting killed. The state government is either not willing to deal with violence or not capable of dealing with violence. This is a case of constitutional breakdown. Then in a state, if the government of the day has lost majority in the lower house, if it continues to be in power, then that is constitutional breakdown. If a direction given by the union government is not implemented by the state government, then that is a constitutional breakdown. So constitutional breakdown means many things. So once there is a constitutional breakdown in any state, the union government through the President of India can declare president rule. Here the president rule can be declared either on the basis of the report of the governor or even otherwise. Then who can declare president rule? The president can declare president rule. And once president rule is declared, it can continue in operation for 2 months. Within 2 months, Parliament shall approve president rule by simple majority. If Parliament gives approval, then it can continue for 6 months. And if the Parliament gives approval, it can continue for another 6 months, maximum 1 year. So beyond 1 year, the president rule cannot continue. If the president rule has to continue beyond 1 year, there are 2 requirements. One is national emergency shall be in operation. The other one, the Election Commission of India, if it certifies that elections cannot be conducted in any particular state for any reason, then the president rule can be extended for a maximum period of 3 years. So in ordinary circumstances, the president rule can continue for only 1 year. Beyond 1 year, if you want to extend the president rule, there are at least one of these 2 requirements. Whether national emergency shall be in operation or the Election Commission of India must certify that elections cannot be conducted in that particular state because of several reasons. Then, Article 356 proved to be one of the most controversial articles under the Indian Constitution. In the Constituent Assembly, when Article 356 was debated, many members of the Constituent Assembly expressed apprehension that this article gives a sweeping power to the union government to dismiss the state governments. So, when the members of the Constituent Assembly have expressed fear, B.R. Ambedkar said that Article 356 will remain as a dead letter, which means it will be never abused. We proved Dr. B.R. Ambedkar wrong. This is the most abused and misused article under the Indian Constitution. It has been misused more than 135 times in the last 75 years. The recent incident was the imposition of president rule in Manipur. That was a case of proper use. But otherwise it has been used more than 135 times. It was used 135 times till now. In most of the cases it was abused. So instead of remaining as a dead letter, Article 356 became a deadly weapon in the hands of the union government. And then what are the consequences of imposition of president rule? Once president rule is declared in the state, the elected government in the state will be dismissed. Once the parliament gives approval to the president rule, the state legislature will be dissolved. So in 1994, in one of the important judgments, in S.R. Bommai case, the Supreme Court said, declaration of president rule is subjected to judicial review. Without proper material, if the president rule is declared in any state with modified reasons, then the Supreme Court said that it can reactivate the government which is dismissed. It can reactivate the legislative assembly which is dissolved. And the Supreme Court also said, if a particular elected government has lost majority in the lower house, then that has to be verified on the floor of the house. The Supreme Court also said, unless the parliament gives approval to the president rule, the legislative assembly should not be dissolved. And the Supreme Court has given an elaborate guidelines. It said what are the proper situations where the president rule can be invoked, what are the situations where it is not proper to use Article 356. So the Supreme Court has based this judgment on the recommendations of the Sarkaria Commission. And in this case, in S.R. Bommai case, the Supreme Court said federalism is a basic feature. The union government must be careful while invoking its power under Article 356. So after the judgment of the Indian Supreme Court, the misuse of Article 356 has greatly come down. So the judgment of the Indian Supreme Court in S.R. Bommai case tried to make Article 356 to a great extent as a dead letter. That's about the president rule. The next one is financial emergency. So Article 360 speaks about financial emergency. If the financial stability of India is threatened, either in the entire country or part of the country, financial emergency can be declared. Under Article 360, financial emergency can be declared again by the President on the advice of the Union Cabinet headed by Prime Minister. And once financial emergency is declared, within 2 months, Parliament shall give approval. Unlike President rule, unlike the national emergency, once Parliament gives approval to financial emergency, it can continue for an indefinite time till it is withdrawn by the President. Then what are the consequences of financial emergency? Once a financial emergency is declared, the salaries of the officers of the state government can be reduced. The salaries of the officers of the union government can be reduced. All the money bills passed by the state governments can be reserved for the consideration of the President. The union government can give directions to the state governments for maintaining financial discipline. So this power of financial emergency was not invoked in India till now. And what is the criticism of the emergency provisions under the Indian Constitution? It was criticized that the emergency provisions of the Indian Constitution will lay a foundation for the establishment of a totalitarian state. So they are a threat to the rights and liberties of the people. When it comes to financial emergency, Hrudayanath Kunjru, H.N. Kunjru said, it will affect the financial autonomy of the states. Some said it is a chapter of retrogression. And there was also supporters of the provisions of the Constituent Assembly. Some said it acts as a safety valve. Even Dr. B.R. Ambedkar in the Constituent Assembly said, altogether I cannot deny the abuse of the provisions of the emergency under the Indian Constitution. And true to what Dr. B.R. Ambedkar believed, emergency provisions were abused in 1975 by Mrs. Indira Gandhi government. So that's it about the emergency provisions of the Indian Constitution. We will continue the rest of the topics in the next video. Thank you.